Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, I am currently going on to the next part of my build series in T9, and that is going to be the Megathron Battleship. Now, I'm leaving the Dominix for last because the Dominix is a massive favorite. It's actually one of the most requested ships for any build that you could ever have. I've done personal research for individuals on it. I've looked at a lot of things within it, but here goes the the Megatron. Right, so the Megatron will be done now, and the Dominix will follow it shortly after. So you're gonna get this on Tuesday, and on Thursday you will get the Dominix. Now Friday will start the collaboration series. So Friday will start the first of the collaboration videos, and it will move on all the way down the week till you finally get the last video of the week. Now, it won't go till the last day of the week. You're actually going to get 10 videos from the collaboration. Then you're going to get the combat the week following that, because that's a total of one more episode. It's going to be a very large video compared to my regular videos, and that is going to be the combat video. I don't intend to cut it down, but after the combat video will be after match report basically. So you might get some pre-match reports from some of the other content creators from the collaboration series. So just go look up their descriptions in my description down below. Look up their channels in the description down below. You can go directly to them. I've been featuring them on everything on my channel for the past few weeks. There's tons of them on there. They may end up showing up in the battles, and that's because the battles may seem that they're just simple 1v1s. The 5 who made the builds are most likely going to be part of the matches, and then the others from the collaboration may participate depending on availability. We also have to finalize times, and that's the only reason why I haven't gotten any time for any type of live streams that might come out of the actual battles. You might be able to watch the battles live on the server, but obviously that won't be on my channel. That might be on Savat the Mighty or Havoc 37 or Eternal Echoes. They might have it live. RAMBO, myself, and some of the other content creators don't do much live content, so you will be able to get that content from us at a later time. So let's get into the Megatron. Okay, large railgun operation per level, minus 5% activation time and plus 5% tracking speed. That gives it a 25% faster shot, and that is making quite a big difference, because this will now give you that ability to have 2 activations in any type of targeting computer. So that is one of the big advantages. This is an identical top row setup to that of the Naga 2. The only difference is that you have 2 drones on the large slot which can go in. And minus 5% inertia modifier, that means it has a 25% inertia modifier. This is going to allow it to move a lot faster. It gives it some advantage in combat, but it's not enough of an advantage for it to outweigh something like a battle cruiser. It still does have that fall off. Overall defense 63,731. So that is where its overall defense sits. Flight velocity 121 meters per second. It is quite fast for a battleship, considering that the Naga is just 141 meters per second. The 20 meter per second difference also does not take into consideration that there is an inertial modifier difference between the two. There is lower inertia on the battle cruiser to start with, and the Megatron has a higher inertia to start with. Its overall defense difference is just under 25,000. So that's where the big difference comes in terms of power. After we pass a few weeks into T9, when we have enough research pumped into our battleships and our large weapons, if you were already in a Naga, once you have pulled up your research to 545454, you will be able to effectively beat the Naga with the Megatron. Okay. So warp speed 2 AU per second, it means moving to activities the ship is going to be extremely slow. Power grid output 979 megawatts. That is something to be very careful about. Railguns are really heavy. 10,157 gigajoule capacitor and a 1,350 cubic meter cargo hold. So let's run through all the slots that we have. 2 drones, 7 high slots for weapons, 3 mid slots, 6 low slots, and 3x3 in rigs. Now generally I am going to set this up very similar to that of the Naga. Here are all the reasons why it's not going to be effective on long range. It doesn't have a distance bonus. It doesn't have a damage bonus either. So it isn't going to get any type of overall impact bonus from firing. And since it doesn't get that bonus for distance, but it does have a tracking speed modifier, it is going to be slightly more effective in combat than the Naga. But it's going to have smaller ranges, it's going to be slower, and it definitely will have a tough time catching any ships that can outweigh it with speed. So let's get into this and let's go for the build. So first things first, remember we have, okay wait, let me just open this one more time. I'm just going to double check. 9779. Now with a 5 skill, that's 25% extra power grid. I am going to count it as a total of 2200 power grid added to the ship. Now that is overestimating it slightly, but that is a fine estimation. 2200 extra gives me 12,200 to work with, and that is including research. I'm putting that in right now because I already know there's going to be some tough decisions ahead when I go to the next set of fittings. Okay, so let's look at the large railguns for the ship. They're 900 megawatts a piece and it's times 7. So 9 times 7 by default will give you 6,300 megawatts. 6,300 megawatts is quite a big chunk of your power grid, but there is a secondary catch. You only have this 56 kilometer range. Everything from your research will affect the range, so that is the only other thing that's going to extend you. Now, unlike the Naga, you're not going to break the 121 meters barrier that easy with the ship. You are more than likely going to have an effective range closer to 60 to 70 kilometers with the ship. It keeps you in the close range, it doesn't break the long range fit. Now make sure that you note that, because the next part in my build will basically be ruining the rest of it for you, where it basically tells you where your fall off starts and where you are going to go with this build to keep it optimal. Okay, so moving on, your next option is to go snub nose and go Brawler with the ship. Now this is my recommended fit for the Megathron, for Brawler. Now you might be wondering, why would you go Brawler with the ship? Well, here's a simple reason. Everybody is going to try and get under your guns. And if you look at the optimal range, 7.2 with the 10 kilometer accuracy fall off. This makes you inside the 20 kilometer mark. Most small ships are going to try and take you in that range. You have a smaller power grid requirement of 816, and 7 times 8 is 56 megawatts. So that's around where you, 5,600 megawatts. It leaves you with a lot of room for you to actually improve the ship. Now both options are viable. The problem is anything that gets under your guns with the long range format is definitely going to be a problem. You do have a lot of extra tracking speed, and it will help you with taking out small ships as they approach. However, you don't have a lot of room to take out ships, even though your weapon cycles slightly faster. The activation time is 7.8 seconds. With that 25% knockoff, it is going to make it quite small. From the say, it's a quarter that will be removed of that time. So around 1.7 seconds will be pulled off. That's going to give you a 6.18 second fire time for your snub nose on the close range. Plus research will knock off some of that time, making it faster. Now please keep that in mind, because your DPS doesn't skyrocket through the roof like it would with some of the other ships. Your DPS is staying quite constant. You don't have enough of a bonus to overpower your enemies. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why I don't really like the Megathron too much. As you can see right now where it stands, it doesn't have enough of a bonus to beat the Naga. But the Megathron Striker, or the Megathron Strike, is way more powerful than this and does outweigh the Naga in terms of DPS. Its benefits outweigh its negatives, and it then has a much greater advantage. This ship has a 25k advantage on the Naga, but it has a weakness of not being able to match the range. If I keep my 80Ks on someone who's PvPing me and they try to do long range, they'll keep trying to come into my range and stay at a perfect range for me to keep hitting them with slow damage. The 25k advantage they have will not play into their combat, and they will end up losing. I also don't have to worry about things like tracking disruptors interfering with my range too much, because they are within that range where it does have a major fall off. I will be able to extend my weapons greater than that range and beat that distance. So those are all of the reasons why I wouldn't really worry about someone trying to disrupt my range. Okay, so let's move on to the next set. Now remember, the one was at 6,300, the other is at 5,600. So we are close in range to, sorry, no, it should be 8 times 7. 6,300 minus 700 should give me where I was. So it should be 5,600. Yeah, I'm right. Sorry. So yeah, that's where it should be. There is a little bit of extra power, but I'm ignoring it for now because it's not really going to play that heavy. Now, as for mid slots, depending on your fit, if you are going Brawler, there is a special fit. If you aren't going Brawler, there is a fit for you to use. So number one, for your drones, you are going to stock up 2 types of drones on these ships. Ever since the quick change feature has come in, it does make a difference. You will keep 2 MK9 infiltrators. Now the MK9 infiltrators will give you a slight advantage in combat. Okay, you're going to see me purchase 2. Okay, you're actually going to see me just purchase 1 MK7. Now the simple reason for that is I'm actually storing it on my ship for using it in any type of combat situation, so that I do have that advantage when things get fast. That's because I've noticed things have gotten fast again beyond where they were previously. So yeah, yet again we're going through that whole phase. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to keep 2 medium drones on your ship. One like the infiltrator for very fast enemies, one like the Vesper for slower enemies that just end up under your guns, so that you can do a severe amount of damage. And that is definitely going to help you on that close range combat. They will apply a constant amount of damage, and that is what you want to do. You want to break through those ships and get to the next step of combat as fast as possible. Now, since the ship is actually a large capable ship, you obviously do have that option. Considering that you do have some speed, you could use it to take on anything that comes into your close range. Now, against a Brawler fit Naga, the Brawler fit Megathron will win. That's because it has a faster fire time and it has that ability for tracking speed. So you're going to get more efficient hits more often, and this is going to give you a higher amount of DPS. While the Brawler fit Naga will be able to pull a slightly larger range, the orbital distance is going to have quite a heavy effect on the fall off for the Naga. So regardless of everything, remember, this is where the ship only shines, in the close range, close quarter fight. The Naga can't continuously regen with large shield boosters, so it will have to use medium shield boosters in the Brawler setting on the close range combat. That is the only way for it to stay stable against this type of a foe. So to give you your edge, you will go with 2 MK9 Praetors, right? These 2 MK9 Praetors, as you can see, have an orbital speed of 384 meters per second. This is strong enough for you to take on something like a Naga or any other battleship. Battle cruisers, some of them will be within your range, and most cruisers will be outside of this range for combat. So please keep in mind that if you don't have a battleship or a battle cruiser, you will have to swap out your weapons to something smaller. If you have frigates flying around you or destroyers, you might have to go all the way down to smalls. Now, keeping those in your cargo hold isn't too expensive. You keeping an additional 20 million worth of drones on your ship isn't going to kill your ship, because it's just a small amount of excess on your ship. It doesn't really kill your ability to fight. It isn't too heavy, and it doesn't fill up the slot to the point that it is a total burden in case you lose your ship. You don't lose more than the value of your vessel. And that is one of the warnings on keeping drones. Don't ever overstock to your drone capacity, because by the time you do that, if somebody does have enough firepower to overpower you, they're going to destroy your ship before all those drones are finished. So not really a very good option. Destroying drones is very easy because people don't do this, and those are the catches when it comes to actual combat. Okay, so we've got the drones in, and now we have to talk about your mid slots. So if you were going in on the close range combat, what would you need? Well, the first thing in close range combat is going to be a Predator stasis Weber fire. Predator stasis Weber fire will lock in close enemies and knock them out. The second thing you're going to use on these, which is just a standard because a lot of ships are running micro warp drives, is a Predator warp scrambler. Sorry, no. You'll just use one of the Serpentis warp scramblers or the True Sanchez, basically the faction class below it. And this here will then give you that advantage over anything that tries to scram you in the close range combat. Now with these type of scramblers, what is this advantage going to give you? When they come in with the micro warp drive, it instantly drops them out of micro warp, and this here will pull down their speed. The slower they are, the easier they are to hit. Most cruisers will cruise within the range of 300 to 400. With your Weber fire hitting them, you will be able to pull them down slow enough for large drones to do DPS. And in the case of frigates, you still will pull them down into that range, but it is more advised for you to use the mediums or something like a small to actually apply damage to them over time with these types of ships. Sorry, you have two drones, so that is your advantage in combat. You can always test 1 and 1 and see which one does damage, which one doesn't do damage, and then you can obviously swap. If you are doing damage with your large drones and your medium drone is also doing damage, you can swap out to double large. That's the way in which you will work using these two particular mids. Now when it comes to the mid slot, there is two options for your last fitting. You can use a tracking disruptor to interfere with all the other ships that are going to be in close range, or you can go with the second Weber fire. Now a tracking disruptor can always be changed to a guidance disruptor if you are running into Karista space or directly into Kaldari missions, because the most common weapon that you will face off against is missiles. So that is the option, but I wouldn't really suggest it, because even within the Kaldari space there is a lot of railguns for you to fight off. So that is my suggestion to you in terms of what to place in the Brawler fit. Now for the long range fit, you are at 60 to 70 kilometers. You are not outside of range of most weapons, so this is what you're going to do. It's a simple application. You're going to go with the target painter, one group one group shield booster, and you might want to think about something on the lines of a guidance disruptor or a tracking disruptor. Now considering your range, it doesn't make a big enough difference to knock out the ability for ships to fire, but considering that you might be facing off against other railguns or other cannons, this here will give you a chance to actually knock down their ranges so that you don't really have to worry about too much of damage. It will decrease the amount of damage you're taking because you have reduced their optimal and you are falling outside of their optimal fire range. Okay, so there is the mid slots done. Now those are the three mid slots that you can apply for the close range and the long range combat. Let's go to the low slots. Now the Megathron is from Galante. It has a very small difference between its shield and armor, but considering the type of ship that you are running, the armor bonus, in consideration that it is a large vessel, will be way bigger. It's going to work out to quite a big number in the thousands, so I will suggest you going with the armor boost for the ship. So we are not going to touch any of the regular shield bonuses, and this is also one of the reasons why I don't like the Megathron. since it doesn't favor shields, it always has that massive weakness about you playing it closer to risk. So you allow them to take out your shield for very low cost, and then they're hitting your armor. Now when it comes to a shield tank, even though your armor isn't protected by any type of armor wrap, your shield can always be recovered in small amounts that delays the amount of damage to your armor. And if you recover your shield fast enough at any point, like with an extender and a shield booster, you do cover up for your armor quite quickly. So there is the advantage of running shield tanks. Even in the armor, you do have that advantage of pulling forward. And when it comes to an armor tank, you don't have that advantage in the last part. You simply lose all of your shield tank and it ends up into your armor very quickly. That's the difference between the two fits. That's how come I favor shield ships. It's not that shields are that much superior. In fact, shields have a lower resistance to most types of damage, while armor has extremely high resistance. Armor does slow down your ship when you extend it with armor plates, but armor does have the advantage of being more resilient in terms of hit points and giving you more tank in terms of what you can actually do. So that is the whole thing with the two tanks. That is where they have fall off and advantage. With the shield tank, what you actually do is you extend the amount of time you have on your armor just by recovering a little bit of shield for a few seconds. Example, if your armor extender gives you 2000 your shield extender gives you 2000 shield. If you run your booster in between that phase with your mediums, you extend it to quite a distance, and let's say for example you get 4 boosts in, you get the same amount as the extender. That means if they didn't beat the extender in one full volley at that point in the fight, they're still going to have to beat that extender's range on your shield again in order to get to the armor. That's going to buy you some time, and if you buy enough time, you could actually recover enough shield. Obviously this implies that you made a mistake in the start of the fight, and that's how come you only started recovering late. So say for example you took heavy damage, you allowed it to go below 50%, and then all of a sudden you kicked in your booster, and after that when you went too low you kicked in your extender. That's the only time that it makes sense for you to have this type of a situation. Recovering in those periods of time when the extender covers you does help you quite a bit, and shields are generally more resilient when they have higher amounts of power. Okay, so let's start off with the armor wrap. Since you have a large vessel and you have on average 5000 effective 5000 effective power grid, I'm going to go with double armor wraps on the large class. Now you might be wondering why double large armor wrap. Well, here's the reason. The two put together give you 2300 recovery of points. They activate every 15 seconds. This means that in a minute you could recover 10,000 effective HP on your ship. Now 10,000 points to your armor wrapping is quite a significant amount. In 1 minute, most ships don't do that much of damage. Missile ships have that long waiting period. They do an average of about 20,000 in that period, and if you have boosted your shields correctly, the resistances that you naturally have will bring it down to something like 12,000 in a minute that you're going to take in damage. With 10,000 being your recovery, you have now balanced out your loss of armor. It extends the amount of time you have in combat. Remember, the whole idea is for you to beat one of your enemies in that period. These are PvE fits after all. Okay, so moving on, the next thing which you're going to put in is armor hardness. Now you're going to go with an adaptive armor hardener. You're only going to go with one. This knocks off 3 parts of your armor. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I put an armor plate and an armor wrap? And it's quite simple. The armor plate does give you a lot of extra armor to go through, but it also slows your ship tremendously. And with a slowed ship, it means that you're going to take more damage every single time the enemy hits. So you don't want to have that risk, and you don't want to be the perfect target for the enemy. So that is the reason why I am opting to not put on armor plates. It's the only reason why I don't do such a thing. Okay, moving on for the next thing on the ship. Now, I did mention that you are using some things to your advantage, and you now have 3 slots left on your ship, and you have about, let's see, from 6,000 you had another 6,000 basically left there. It was just under. So you took out 2,000, you have around 4,000. So let's say 3,700 at the maximum. 3,700, and both for close range and long range, those fits work. The next thing that's very important is extending your amount of speed. You need more speed with these ships, especially if you're brawling. And I'm not going to go with a micro warp drive. Now, the reason for that is quite simple. Most storylines, most encounters, most enemies nowadays run scramblers, and that knocks you out when you brawl. And as for the long range fit, obviously you know that the difference is you're not that close to enemies. You could always swap out your parts. So I'm going to go with a large afterburner. Now, the large afterburner does impart quite a big bonus to your ship, and let me just show you exactly what I mean. 153% isn't the final amount. It goes up past 200 because of your bonuses to afterburner, and this gives you triple your speed. So this ship can effectively do 360 meters per second very easily. So with the afterburner applied, you have this massive amount of turning radius and a lot of speed. It is definitely a big help to you overall. As you can see, it does have some repercussion to you since it does give you more inertia. So it is going to make you turn a little bit heavier, but that is just one of the after effects of a large afterburner. And as you can see, it's not too heavy compared to the micro warp drive. You also can't get the effects of your afterburner pulled off by a warp scrambler. You have to be webbed multiple times to pull it off. One web only reduces you by 50%, and remember, you went up to 3 times your speed. It will reduce you to something like 180, and a second web will then pull you down out from 180 to 90. That's the only time that it effectively beat your afterburner. That's why you go with double afterburn. When you're chasing people with afterburners, you go with double warp scrams. Sorry, not warp scrams, but double Weber fires. Now, if you are going with the micro warp drive, it is the long range fit. It is not for the short range fit because it will not be effective in the close range combat. Now, as you can see, you still have the same inertial penalty with the quality bonus of 50,000 kilograms. Your flight velocity is 514. When it comes to these, putting in something like a Weber fire will not hurt the ship's ability to run. Double webbing it isn't going to stop it enough to actually make any difference. You have effectively 6 times your speed. So 121 times 6, that's going to give me 720 meters per second, and that's just off the standard speed. It does go much higher. If I web it by 50%, that isn't going to really knock it down very little. It does take out 250%, but it does still leave you with quite a bit. From that massive speed that you had, you have only come down to 360. And if I knock 360 again, you're still at 180. You're still faster than it is. And if I knock you with the third, that's the only time that you fall below the limit for your particular speed. Now, as you can see, it took 3 webs to effectively knock out the micro warp drive, and that is why it's always effective to run the micro warp drive for long range combat, because anything that's going to catch you is always going to have to catch up to you at a much larger range, and you can use that to get your advantage to pull off a few shots. Now, the last 2 will change depending on which way you went. If you went for close range, the last 2 are weapon bonuses, and it's going to be quite simple. All of these for the last 2 slots are weapon bonuses. So let's go down to magnetic field, and we'll take the C-type. Now, the magnetic field stabilizer is actually going to help you fire a little bit faster. You're going to go with double for your Brawler. Your Brawler is stable, it has more than enough cap left, and it is quite fast in the close range. You don't have to worry about it all that much. Now, if you were going long range, you're going to go 1 C-type magnetic field stabilizer and 1 tracking computer in the Eagle class. So there you go, that is your breakdown for the long range fighting, and that's about it. So the one allows you to fire a lot faster for a much longer period of time. The other allows you to fire a lot further, a little bit faster for one period of time, and that's where the two fall off in their comparison. The one is a long range fighter, the other is a short range fighter, and this is where they shine. So that is all that I have for those particular builds. Now I know there's some things that still need to be added, and that is in terms of rigs. For your close range combat, you're going to be effectively extending your tank. So for close range, you're going to give yourself extra bonus to repair, field extender, and a reduction to capacitor. Now even though capacitor isn't so expensive for armor, when it comes to brawling it is going to become expensive. Regardless of how good you are, you will start running into that cap really quickly. With any type of reduction that comes into the ship, you also have to worry about power, because of the fact that you are running a power hungry weapon. Now beyond these first two, there isn't really anything massive that I can think of that is going to affect your ship. So that is all that you're going to need in terms of your brawlers combat rigs. In terms of engineering, you're simply going to go one auxiliary thruster, double semiconductor control, and that is for the brawler. This is going to give you a massive capacitor. You're over 10,000 to start with, and you had 25% added from your standard research that pulled you up to 12,000. You then increase by 20%, and that is going to give you 2,000. 12,000 divided by 4, 3,000 effective. So you're going to go up all the way to 18,000 effective capacitor on that vessel. That's a nice large capacitor for you to run through. It also makes you able to take on things like the Armageddon and the Dominics in close range combat. You can't do this with the Naga in close range, so this is the only place where the Megathron really shines, and that is in close range combat with other battleships. The Naga shines in long range combat with other battleships, and it would even beat the Megathron in the long range fight. It would struggle severely against the Tempest due to the Tempest speed being as high as it is. Okay, so what about your long range fit? Well, standard for my build, you're going to double extend your range for your railguns, and you're going to increase the damage on the railguns. Now you would notice that I didn't do anything for the armor reps. You have a much larger, much more stable ship. You don't really have to worry about it like you did with the Naga. So there is one thing for your advantage. The next thing that you're going to do in terms of your second field, it's going to be your engineering, is one auxiliary thruster, 2 semiconductor controls. Your effective power grid on the ship will be closer to 14,000. There is a 4,000 difference between the two due to the micro warp drive being used to give you range. So be very careful about that. Don't expect them to be identical. This is only going to give you a range around 60 kilometers to 70 kilometers on fighting, depending on your research. So please don't expect yourself to have the same range as a Naga or a Naga 2. The Naga 2 is more effective in combat due to its 7 weapon slots and 6 low slots than the original Naga with 6 weapon slots and 5 low slots. So that is all that I have for this build. I hope that you all did enjoy, and I will catch you all in the next one.